mercy brought me through. I'm living this moment.
I want to preach from the thought, when nasty women persist. When nasty women persist. Hillary Clinton's candidacy sparked a wave of misogyny that some believe cost her the election. This sexist backlash, which was intended to demean and degrade women, was actually the driving force behind the revival of the feminist movement. During the third presidential debate, while Hillary Clinton was responding to a question about health care, Donald Trump muttered into his microphone, "Such a nasty woman." This comment, which was intended to be an insult, became a battle cry. Within minutes after the debate, "nasty women get stuff done" was trending on social media. In the same way, on February 7th, Senator Elizabeth Warren took to the Senate floor to share a letter written by Coretta Scott King back in 1986, where King urges Congress to block the nomination of Jeff Sessions for federal judge. As Warren read the letter aloud, she was silenced by Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who later defended his actions by stating she was warned, she was given an explanation, nevertheless, she persisted. Women like Coretta Scott King and Rosa Parks, women like Ruby Bridges and Gloria Richardson, women like Sojourner Truth and Malala Yousafzai. As women started to take ownership of the phrases "nasty women" and "she persisted," I want you to know that my wheels began to turn. I started to think about all the women in the Bible who have been viewed for whatever reason as nasty, but nevertheless, they persisted. Women like Hannah, who after going to the temple to pray was accused of being drunk, but nevertheless, she persisted. Women like Queen Vashti, who refused to parade around naked for her husband, the king, and his dinner guests. She was warned, she was given an explanation, but nevertheless, she persisted. And her persistence paved the way for Esther. Women like Mary, the mother of Jesus, who became pregnant before marriage. Mary Magdalene, who was possessed by 7 demons. The woman with the issue of blood, who was an outcast and ostracized because of her issue. And my personal favorite, the woman who is the subject of our text today. Now, if you let some preachers tell her story, they would have us to believe that she was the ultimate nasty woman. I grew up hearing preachers harp on the fact that she had 5 husbands and the one she was with now was not her husband. The interpretation and the presentation of this woman over the years as being a whore or a prostitute, first of all, isn't fair. Preachers have had no problems criticizing this woman, but I have yet to hear the same criticisms about King David. I have yet to hear the same criticism about King Solomon, who is recorded as having 700 wives and 300 concubines. Like so many of us, this woman didn't start out thinking that she would have five husbands. She didn't plan it. She didn't ask for it. And I'm sure if given the choice, she would have chosen for things to go another way. But that's what happens when life happens. And I know that somebody in the house knows what I'm talking about today, because we have all started out life with ideas and plans of how we wanted our lives to go. But somewhere along the line, life happened, accidents happened, mistakes happened, bad choices happened, breakups happened, divorce happened, illness happened. But does anybody know that we are not defined by what happened in our lives? The only thing that can define our lives is God himself. This woman was bold. She was informed. She was courageous. And dare I say, she was nasty. First, this woman is alone. And I can tell right off the bat that this woman doesn't fit in. Not only is she traveling alone, but she's coming to draw water at noon. Now everyone knows that the sun is hottest when? At noon. And she is going to carry her bucket up to the well, fill it up, and then bring it back down to the village at the hottest time of the day. At the well, for these Samaritan women, it was a lot like the black woman's tradition of gathering in the kitchen. When women gather in the kitchen, it's not just about snapping peas and mixing cornbread and seasoning chicken. Just being in the kitchen, listening to the conversation and the wisdom that was coming forth. That is what it was all about. Gathering at the well was an opportunity for these women to connect. I don't know why, but for some reason, the woman in our text is coming to the well alone. She's coming alone. And let me tell you something. There is just something about being alone that leads to an encounter with God. That Jacob was alone when the angel wrestled with him all night long. Moses was alone when God appeared to him in the form of a burning bush. Elijah was alone in a cave on a mountain when God passed by and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" If that's not getting it, then for all of you who are participants in the women's Bible study, you know that Mac had to go to the shack. What? Alone. There is just something about being alone that leads to an encounter with God. So if you don't hear anything else I preach today, I want you to hear this. Don't try so hard to fit in. Maybe God has you alone for a reason. How many opportunities have we missed because we were more concerned about fitting in? God called us to stand out. How are you standing out today? How are you standing out in your family? How are you standing out on your job? How are you standing out with your friends, with your group of friends? Or are you more concerned with just blending in? But she also had no problem breaking the rules. First, Jesus breaks a geographical rule. Even though it was the most direct route to travel to Galilee, Jews were not supposed to travel through Samaria. Not only does Jesus break that rule, not only does Jesus decide that he's going to go through Samaria, but Jesus decides that he's going to stop in Samaria. He's going to send his disciples to get some chicken. Somebody say Jesus is a rule breaker. Because in verse 9, she says to Jesus, "How is it that you, a Jew, can ask me, a Samaritan woman, for a drink?" Somebody say she knows the rules. She knows the rules, but nevertheless, she persisted. This woman must have recognized that Jesus had what she needed. Sometimes in order to get what God has for you, you have to break some rules. Is there anybody in the house today who can say, "I'm the man I am today. I'm the woman I am today because mama refused to be silent, because grandmama refused to sit still, because my sister broke the rules"? Is there anybody in the house today who can say, "I am who I am because there have been some nasty women who have paved the way so that I can be who I am today"? And last, but certainly not least, this Samaritan woman was a nasty woman because nevertheless she persisted in the face of those who counted her out. Now, the interesting thing about that is that while the disciples are off scratching their heads and eating chicken, this woman is engaged in deep theological discourse with Jesus. In the very concepts that Jesus had tried to get his disciples to understand for years, this woman gets in one conversation. People who have counted me out can't count. My God's math is different. I'm telling you right now, when I look at an equation that God had been working on, when I sit down and I look and I say, wait a minute, hold on, how did God get that from that? Let me tell you about the way my God's math is set up. It just doesn't make sense. You see, in our math, 2 fish and 5 loaves equal a couple of fish sandwiches.
Come on.
But when God is working the equation, 2 fish and 5 loaves can feed a multitude. You see, when we're doing the math, 1 cross and 1 tomb, that equals death. But you see, the way my God's math is set up, 1 cross and 1 tomb equals early on Sunday morning. God got up with all power in his hand.
There's no one like you.